This is Fibromyalgia, 1999 to 2009, and we're reading an article that we wrote in 1999 that said we had started a revolution in the discovery of the causes for fibromyalgia and its correct treatment. Greetings to our friends in New Zealand and Australia. I hope you're doing well, and in Singapore. To continue, 2, fibromyalgia, new discoveries with new tools. The first demon, protein enzyme deficiency. At the end of the 70s, we have written about this ever since. I found that the 9 out of 10 subjects who examined were not found to be able to digest, transport, utilize, or incorporate the daily dietary protein, which was usually adequate, except for some vegetarians, in intake. The discoveries of Reinhold Voll, MD, God bless him, enabled me to put 2 and 2 together and establish that the pancreatic points that he identified as protein digestion, carbohydrate digestion, and fat digestion on the pancreas meridian were almost always caused by lack of suitable amino acids. We developed the Vickery Voll test, which was the beginning of an entirely new view of the body, and explained why we were never able to keep our patients straight. The way it is believed to work is simple. Amino acids in the correct proportions and in adequate amounts reverse the deficiency by supplying the pancreas and intestinal gland. And with the ingredients necessary to synthesize adequate digestive enzymes to digest the dietary intake. Having the necessary enzymes, the daily food intake is more completely utilized, and the transport of carrier proteins, get that word, carrier proteins, are manufactured in suitable amounts. And the entire enzyme cascade of the body is reestablished. This begins within 12 hours. Every case of fibromyalgia is found to have this deficiency, but so do many other problems. We had identified the first demon, which was protein enzyme deficiency, and the second demon we identified in this article as sulfur deficiency. We had just discovered a test for sulfur and found that I myself, taking my original amino acid formula, was sulfur deficient. And we found that tons were, especially people with infections. The body gets most of its dietary sulfur from proteins in the form of sulfur-bearing amino acids and sulfur-bearing plants, such as garlic and onions and cabbage and peppers, etc. I knew about this problem in the early 80s, but also knew that an amino acid formula that I had developed, there was 1 molecule of methionine, and there were 2 in cysteine. Furthermore, we were unlocking the dietary proteins, taurine, etc., which are also sulfur-containing. In retirement, I found a test for sulfur that showed a high percentage of persons that took our amino acids and formulas religiously were still sulfur deficient, myself included. I also found that infections, the arthritis and poisonings, heavy metals, PAHs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, etc., responded much, much better when we added methylsulfonine, methine, to our amino acid formula. Every person that had fibromyalgia was sulfur deficient. That's why we put the MSM in our patented formula, Platinum Plus. And we use that for every single thing that we treat, practically. The third demon, spinal disc degeneration. Here's a mystery. 20 years of these doctors that I've been observing them don't know any more about back pain than they did in the 80s. By 1986, I had developed 2 tests that screened the spine for spinal disc lesions. The BEV test, B-E-V, and the CCT, or confirmatory challenge test, which also identified exactly discs which were involved in the corrections necessary to relieve them. I have written about them since that time and will not spend time here describing them. I will, however, explain that every case of fibromyalgia has discal degeneration throughout the entire spine. Put that in your cap and keep a lock on it, because we're talking now about the boys with their toys thinking about central sensitization. For those of you who are not familiar with my grading of discal lesions, we include the drawings which we presented way back in the early 80s. We'll have them up on screen for you. You will note that we're talking mostly about the intradiscal lesion, or grade 1. This has no visible changes apparent in the CAT scan, the MRI, myelogram studies done with contrast media, but is neurologically active. It is this lesion that most chiropractors are unknowingly trying to correct. This puts these practitioners in the same thing as a carpenter without glue and other fasteners. This was known to me in 1982 when I pioneered the use of the CAT scan and the study of discal lesions in the New York area hospitals and private radiological facilities. Their presence is easily demonstrated through the Bev test. It was pretty much a theory standing alone at that time, but has been since proven by a new procedure that was then IDET, intradiscal electrothermal annuloplasty, which I refer to as boil a disc. It is reported to work well as well as fusion, and claims 80% of patients have reduced pain and greater mobility. The procedure involves a 6-inch needle and a heating element, which is inserted into the particular disc and heated to 194 degrees for 15 minutes. The heat not only kills the nerves, but tightens the surrounding ligaments. I've been trying to inform the profession about this for 20 years, but have only met with defocused stares. Maybe when I tell you the procedure at that time cost $7,000, saving the patient $43,000 for a spinal disc operation, which cost up to $50,000, your attention spans might increase. Although this is not the practical thing to do to the victims of fibromyalgia throughout the entire spine, people might start raising a ruckus. You can see now the accuracy of central sensitization is a valid observation, even though the good doctors are limited by their state-of-the-art diagnostic ability. The few who practice as I do go way beyond that barrier. In other words, they might put the hot needle in the wrong disc, so they'd have to do it again, but that's all right. And what we see through our testing is the grade 1 discal lesion, which causes all these problems without showing on any visible media. We also have on screen here the sinovertebral nerve and its connections, which show you the communications which runs throughout the body, right to your fingertips.